Hello and welcome everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. My name is Harshmeet Singh and I welcome you all to today's session where we will be discussing the most important news stories from the Hindu and the Indian Express newspaper. This is your daily news analysis session, your one-stop solution to make sure that all the important news stories from the newspapers are covered along with the practice questions for prelims and the mains examination. As you know, in this session, we will not only be discussing the questions, we will also be trying to tell you how to write answers to the mains question that can be asked from these topics. Before we dive deep into the topics that we have taken up, a very quick announcement for all of you. For those who are planning to realize their dream of becoming an IAS officer, these are the programs that we have launched for you. There is a 1-year program and then there's a 2-year program, depending on whichever is your target year. In both these programs, we make sure that there is laser sharp focus on preparing you for the toughest examination in the country. There will be classes that will cover the entire syllabus for the prelims and the mains examination, making sure that you get all the right kind of inputs in the form of practice questions, current affairs, mentorship, and much more. If you need any other information regarding any of these courses, please feel free to check out the description of the video where you will get a link, and you can check out the website as well where all these details will be available for you. Again, the course includes focus on current affairs, focus on mains, prelims, answer writing practice, prelims questions paper, and much more. With that out of the way, let's see what exactly are the topics that we have taken up for you from today's newspaper. These are the topics that we have handpicked. One of this is specifically from the mains examination point of view, while the other topics can be asked in the prelims as well in the mains examination. We'll start our discussion with a CAG report about how our AQI measurement system in India that we rely so heavily on may not be up to the mark. You would have seen so many news stories about AQI going through the roof in multiple Indian cities. Be it Delhi, in recent past this has been the case in Mumbai as well, where a lot of big Indian cities have extremely high AQIs. However, the CAG report points out something extremely important. It says that the AQI measurement system in India may not be up to the mark. We'll be discussing that in detail. This is an article from the Hindu newspaper, page number 2. Then there is another important article which is a good news for India, where our respected defense minister, or the Raksha Mantri as you call him, has announced that India's defense export is increasing at a pretty good pace. As you know, the second part of the budget session is ongoing in the parliament right now. During that, the defense minister said that our defense exports in 2024-25 is up by 12%. It has reached $2.7 billion. Now, this is an extremely important achievement for India. For any sovereign country, it's essential that they are self-sufficient and sovereign when it comes to their own defense production. And this is a big step in that regard. The third topic is about how a lot of Indians are locked up in jails abroad and what exactly is our government doing to try and bring them back. We'll also be discussing about what treaty do we have with other countries, what agreements do we have under which there can be transfer of prisoners, and why is it that those treaties have not been up to the mark. This particular article is from the Indian Express newspaper for today. Then there's an article about how disinformation is a major threat in India. Now, this is an article that is specifically from the mains examination point of view. This is an article that talks about how spreading of fake news, especially with the use of technology such as AI, deepfake, etc., has become a big problem in the country. How it has led to violence in many parts, and what is it that the government is doing to control that specifically. The last article will be about Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. The context of this article is that the 3rd of April is his death anniversary. So there is an article detailing about his life, his achievements, his thoughts, principles, his way of ruling, so on and so forth. As you know, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj anyways is a figure that is an extremely vital figure in India's history and has been a recurring part of the examination in some way or the other. So these are the articles that we will be discussing in today's session. Let's begin then with the first one. The first article, as you can see, is about this CAG report, which is an integral part of our syllabus. I'm sure in Indian polity you have read a lot about the CAG, Comptroller and the Auditor General of India. Now the CAG is usually given the responsibility to audit the accounts of the government of India and the government of states. They tell about how the expenses of the government have been as per the law or not, or has there been some mistake or some kind of a corruption in spending of the money. But the interesting part is the CAG reports are not only limited to the spending of the government. The CAG reports may tackle other issues as well, including the one that you see here. In fact, increasingly in the past decade or so, we have seen the CAG reports covering a lot of other issues as well that may not be specifically about the finances of the government. And this CAG report mainly talks about how AQI measurement specifically in Delhi has not been up to the mark. What are the issues that this report points towards? Now, this report specifically says that when it comes to measuring of the AQI, we have a long way to go. In fact, it says that the PUC certificates that you have, I'm sure all of you would have read about the PUC certificates. PUC certificate basically means pollution under control certificates. You know, when you are driving a vehicle in India, there are three documents that are essential for you: your driving license, your registration, or RC as you call it, and third is a PUC certificate, that is a pollution under control certificate. A lot of these are available at the petrol pumps. The CAG report says that even when it comes to measuring of pollution of these vehicles, most of these centers that claim to be up to the mark, that claim to be able to measure the pollution level of a vehicle, have not been doing a good job. According to them, a lot of PUC certificates are issued to vehicles that may not even qualify to be eligible to run on the road. The context of this article is this particular report of the CAG. The report is titled Prevention and Mitigation of Vehicular Air Pollution in Delhi. That's a very unique case study with respect to Delhi. Whenever we enter the month of October, November, and that is when the situation becomes very bad in Delhi, there's always a blame game about who is responsible for this bad pollution in Delhi. And some people blame the farmers for burning of the stubble, then some people blame the vehicular pollution, but it's actually an amalgamation of all of that. Vehicular pollution is one of the major components of air pollution in Delhi and in other parts of the country as well. And this is why this particular report is extremely vital. Because this report tells us about the problems that exist in our system right now when it comes to ensuring that these kind of laws are followed properly. These are the main issues that have been pointed out by the CAG. First main issue, the monitoring stations do not follow the guideline. You know, in the news articles, you will see that AQI has reached an extremely high level in many parts of the country. And most of the reports mainly talk about how the AQI at different parts of the country or at different parts of Delhi is extremely high. They talk about Anand Vihar, RK Puram, etc. But as per the CAG report, the minimum requirement for these stations to measure pollution level is that they should be running for at least 16 hours in a day. So out of the 24 hours, they should be running continuously for at least 16 hours a day to give a reliable reading. CAG says that that does not happen. As per the CAG, most of these stations are not running for 16 hours a day. Second major flaw, the data collection is not up to the mark. It doesn't have sufficient data points to give us what exactly is the issue. And on top of that, even more glaring is the point that it doesn't even measure lead levels. Now, AQI, as we will discuss in just a bit, the air quality index as it is called, is based on the readings of 8 pollutants. 8. Out of these 8, lead is one of them. And then the CAG report says that you're not even measuring the lead level. So if you're not measuring the level of lead, how can we be sure that you are giving an appropriate reading for the AQI? This is where the CAG has pointed out towards all these flaws that exist specifically in Delhi. The PUC certificate, as I told you, it's essential for any vehicle that is running on the roads. It's in common language called the pollution certificate. It's usually valid for 1 year. When you go to any of these stations, they will basically put a kind of a pipe into the exhaust and then they will see the smoke that is coming out, how much pollutants does it have. For your vehicle to be allowed to run on the roads, the amount of pollution should be below a certain level. The CAG says that these PUC certificates are actually given to almost everyone. You may wonder, on the roads, you will see some vehicles that are throwing out the worst possible kind of smoke, extremely black. It is very, very smelly, and you would know that there's something wrong with this vehicle, but they're running freely because all of them actually get PUC certificates. There is hardly any vehicle that is denied a PUC certificate. That is a big problem. There is a widespread non-compliance right now. It has mostly become a kind of a formality that you go to these pollutions checking places, you get a certificate in your cars or in your bike's name, and then you start running. The CAG says that we need to ensure that the government undertakes frequent inspections, which is not the case right now. The government has just given the contract for these agencies to run, and they have not been ensuring that all these places are actually running up to the mark. So a lot of these inspections have to be done, and this is a responsibility of the government. On top of that, it is also considered that pollution is a part of or is a result of lack of transport infrastructure. For example, the CAG says that despite there being enough budget with the Delhi government, they have not been introducing alternative public transport systems. If you live in a big city in India, Delhi, Mumbai, a lot of the people travel by public transport. In case of Delhi, metro is a preferred choice of transportation. Then there are public buses. The problem with public buses is because they are used so much that they don't have a very long life. For example, if a public bus has been in work or has been in operation for, let's say, a decade or so, its life has almost ended. So every few years, the government needs to buy new buses to make sure that this vehicular arrangement that they have for public transportation is up to the mark. But as per the CAG, Delhi government has been lagging there as well. And money is not a problem. Despite the fact that they had budgetary allocation, they have not been focusing on arranging alternative public modes of transportation. There's shortage of public buses. It is a big problem. Recently there was this issue when the Aam Aadmi Party was in power in Delhi before this election. They announced that we will be buying, let's say, 1,000 buses. And then there was a news that came out that the minister has inaugurated this buying of buses and 1,000 buses have been bought. But the reality was only 20 of them were bought. And then the government clarified later that no, we are trying to say that we will buy 1,000 in total in the coming years. We have started with 20. This is how the governments usually work, that they promise the world, but when it actually comes to realizing it, it becomes a big problem. One other part that is widely ignored, especially in Delhi as per the CAG report, is the parking policy. Now, you might ask, what is parking got to do with pollution? But it is. See, when you don't have designated parking places, people basically search for parking all over the place. Many of them end up parking the vehicle illegally at a place where it is not allowed. That also leads to a lot of vehicular emission. Why? Because it leads to traffic congestion. Traffic congestion means the cars or the bikes will be on the road for much longer than what they have to, and that leads to vehicular pollution. There are multiple studies that say that if we are able to improve our traffic congestion, that alone would have an extremely significant impact on the amount of pollution that we have. So all these things add up. They may seem small, but all these things add up in the long run. Now, this AQI that has been the focus of this entire article, what exactly is this? It stands for Air Quality Index, and it's a measure of how much air pollution do you have in a certain place. AQI is a reading that you get based on 8 specific parameters, or 8 components are the particulate matter 2.5, particulate matter 10, NO2, SO2, carbon monoxide, ozone, lead and ammonia. This question also has been asked in the past by the UPSC. What are the components? What are the things that are measured in the AQI? Based on all of this, the AQI or a reading is given that is called the AQI. Now, it's not that we are not doing anything. When you criticize the government, it is justified. But at the same time, if the government has started certain initiatives, it also makes sense to give them the credit where the credit is due. So, for example, we do have a national clean air program that was launched by the government. The idea of this program is to reduce PM 2.5 and PM 10 concentration by 20 to 30%. 20 to 30% based off what? Means the base year is what? as compared to 2017. So the amount of particulate matter that we had in 2017, the aim is to reduce it, cut it down by 20 to 30%. It's an ambitious goal, but that's what the government is hoping for. Then the government of Delhi specifically in the past has opted for many other policy decisions. Some of them liked by people, some of them criticized by people, but the government has done something. We all know about the famous or infamous even odd policy, where even numbered vehicles were allowed on even dates, odd numbered vehicles were allowed on odd dates. Then we also have the graded response action plan, under which after the AQI goes above a certain level, a lot of activities will be banned in Delhi, like construction activities will be banned, non-essential trucks, etc., will be banned. That has also been done. Then we have also seen many other countries facing similar kind of a problem. We often compare our situation with that of China. If you go back a few years, a lot of cities in China, such as Beijing, for example, had been facing even worse pollution levels. So what did they do? For example, in case of Beijing, they used a lot of high technology tools. For example, they integrated real-time pollution tracking with rapid enforcement. See, the problem has never been the lack of laws. The problem has always been the implementation part of it. So in this case, we have seen implementation being done well by Beijing, by other cities such as London. They have been able to make a difference, something that our government in Delhi and in other parts of the country as well should learn from in the long run. That was our first article for the day. The second article for the day is something to be proud of. For a long time, we have been reading about how India imports most of its weapons, which is a reality even today. If you take out Ukraine, Ukraine's position at the top is temporary because of the ongoing war. If you take out Ukraine, India has almost always been at the very top when it comes to the countries that import most of the weapons. But now in the past few years, the government has shifted its focus to be an exporter of defense equipment as well. And the good news is that the Raksha Mantri, the defense minister, has announced that India's defense export has reached about $2.7 billion. And this is a 12% increase from last year, which is a good sign. Some of the things that are usually in demand from India's side is the BrahMos missile. Tejas is also something which is seeing a lot of interest from other countries, the Pinaka missile system. So we do have a lot of these things that are in demand in many other countries now. It's not such an easy thing to just sell weapons. There is always competition from many other countries such as South Korea are doing very well. Poland, for example, is focusing a lot on making tanks. So there's always a tough competition from other parts of the world, not just because of big countries, but small countries as well are doing very well in export. But India also is trying to make a name for itself. Defense related questions, anyways, are very commonly asked, such as the one that you see on the screen that was asked in 2018. Whatever question that I'm sharing here with you, previous year questions, I hope you would be able to practice these, you would be able to know the answer, and do tell us in the comment section what is the answer for these, so that we can see how up to date you are with the previous year questions as well. It will also help you revise all these previous year topics as we go along. Now, as I said, the context is that there has been a significant growth in India's defense export. Before going ahead, I'll give you a very interesting homework here. Not a difficult one, because just one Google search will tell you the answer. Find out which is the country to which India exports most of its defense equipment, and tell me the answer in the comment section. And I'm 100% sure you will be surprised to know the answer. The question is very simple. To which country does India export most of its defense equipment? Just search that out and tell me in the comment section what exactly is the name of that country, and you might be surprised. Now, what exactly is it that the article tells us? There are a lot of facts, numbers here. The Raksha Mantri, the defense minister, has said that India's defense exports touched 23,622 crore rupees, which is lump sum $2.76 billion, which is the highest ever defense export from India, which is a good thing. See, exporting these kind of a thing, first, it obviously helps you with foreign exchange, which is a necessity for us. It also makes sure that you make new friends, because the countries that are buying weapons from you are actually depending upon you for their national security and sovereignty, which is a good sign. It also establishes our position as one of the leaders of the global south. As you know, India has been trying to consolidate its position as leader of the global south, leader of the developing world, and this kind of a performance does help us. One other very important part here is that the private sector played a very important role. In the past few years, a lot of private companies have jumped into the defense sector, and the government has also opened the gates for them without any restrictions. The private sector, in fact, contributed 8,389 crore rupees here, which is a very good thing. This is something that we have to or we have learned from other countries. If you look at, take the example of France. So we took the Rafale planes from France. Rafale plane is not manufactured by the government of France. There's a private company called Dassault that actually manufactures those planes. Look at America, the F-16 and all these high-tech weapons that you think about that are being manufactured in America. Those are not being manufactured by the American government. There are private companies in America that are doing that. So in India also, the government in the past few years has been trying to encourage the private sector to enter this field, and they have shown this result here. India exported a wide range of items, including arms, ammunition, subsystems, components, etc. Now, one quick clarification here. When you see the news defense export, the first thing that comes to your mind, oh, we are exporting missiles and guns and helicopters and fighter jets. Not always. Those are big ticket items. Most of our export is not about that. See, when you are buying a gun, you don't just need a gun, you need bullets also, right? You need ammunition. So India exports a lot of ammunitions and smaller components of these bigger systems. Like we are buying S-400 missile defense system from Russia. So we are not exporting something as huge as that, but smaller components, smaller parts of it, other things that you would need in defense. That is what we are exporting. That is why this number is slowly, steadily rising. It can increase much more because, as I said, big ticket items such as BrahMos, Tejas are seeing a lot of interest from other parts of the world as well. There have been multiple institutions that have been working together to turn this into a reality. For example, we have the Department of Defense Production that has a dedicated export portal specifically for such authorizations. See, defense is not an easy sector to work in. It has always been controversial because the allegation of kickback or basically commission being paid to agents. So whether you are buying or you are selling these defense equipment, it is always a very tricky territory to be a part of. And the government has been trying to make sure that it stays away from controversy as much as possible. The government in 2024-25 issued 1,762 export authorizations, means these permissions were given. The target that India has right now is 50,000 crore rupees of export in defense by 2029. That is the target. And again, a lot of it, if it is being achieved or not, would depend on if we are able to sell high ticket, high value items or not. Like fighter jets, missiles, these are high ticket items. So if you sell a few of them also, it will bump up your export numbers significantly. India does follow up, or India does try and compete with other countries that are trying to sell these weapons. So usually what happens, I'll just give you an example. Like let's say Egypt decides that we want to buy certain fighter jets. So they'll kind of float a contract in the international market that we are looking to buy a fighter jet. These are the specifications we are looking. It should be lightweight or heavyweight, or it should be, let's say it should be able to land on the aircraft carriers or not. Based on that requirement, the other countries then fill up the tender, like India would, South Korea would, and then they will compete with each other. That's how the process usually goes. Strategically also, I told you it's extremely important. Almost every big powerhouse that you can think of. When I ask you, imagine a powerful country, whichever country that comes to your mind, the one thing that is common with all of them is all of them are very strong in their own defense equipment. China, US, France, Russia. Think of any big powerhouse, Israel, that you would have in your mind. All of them have this in common, that they are self-sufficient in their own weapon and manufacturing and export. And this is something that India also is trying to do. And as we discussed earlier, it helps us to gain that global trust, to make sure that the countries trust us with their defense. That means that they trust our quality, our manufacturing. The key defense export weapons or exports that we do, BrahMos, then Pinaka rocket system, then the naval vessels that we have. Many countries have shown interest in this. Countries that can't afford to buy extremely expensive weapons from US or Russia, they are the ones that usually come to us because it's much more affordable for them to come and take these weapons from us. So it's a win-win situation for both India and these countries going ahead. Our defense export has also been promoted due to Defense Export Promotion Scheme and the Export Promotion Cell. Both of them work under Ministry of Defense. Both of them try to expedite the entire process of exporting certain defense material. As I said earlier, exporting or importing defense equipment is not very easy. It has always been a very tricky issue. For example, look at India's political history. The Bofors scandal still haunts the Congress. Then a few years back, there was this controversy about whether Rafales are being bought at a right price or not. So all these have become extremely controversial, which is why the governments usually try and go slow when it comes to importing or exporting of defense weapons. That was our second article for the day. The third article that we have here is about how thousands of Indians are locked up in jails outside the country and what is it that we are doing about that. Now, the government of India does have agreements with multiple countries under which if an Indian is sentenced or prisoned in some other country, they will be transferred to India to serve their sentence. Despite that, only very few Indians are actually transferred. That is what this article is about. The government has published the data under which over 10,000 Indians are in jail abroad and only 8, not 8,000, 8 have been brought back since 2023. Now, it's again a very shocking number because 10,000 Indians abroad in jails and then Indian government says that we have agreements also. Even after that, very few Indians, almost negligible number of Indians have come back. This is what the parliamentary panel says. Exact number given by parliamentary panel is 10,152 Indians are currently in prison in 86 countries. That includes under trials and convicted. So there's a difference between the two. Under trial means you are arrested, the case is still going on, it has not been proven. So it is still going on. On the other hand, convicted means the case has been proven now. Now you have started your sentence. That is the difference. So both of them combined are about 152. The agreements that we were talking about that the government of India has with multiple countries, it is called TSP, Transfer of Sentenced Persons. So we have this agreement with about 12 countries where Indian prisoners can be or should be transferred back. But even then, very few of these cases have been successful. And there are multiple issues why this transfer of prisoner does not happen. We'll discuss this in a bit. But again, it's very rare that a prisoner from some other country is actually transferred back. Just look at these numbers. These are the top 5 countries where most Indians are in jail. Saudi Arabia, highest number of Indian prisoners, 2,633. Then UAE, 2,518. Nepal, Qatar, Kuwait. The one common theme that you will see here is West Asia, or what you call as a Middle East, is the region where a lot of Indians are in the jail. As you know, a very heavy Indian diaspora is present in this part of the world. A lot of blue collar workers go and work there. Many of them work in very difficult circumstances when you would have heard many stories about passports being taken away, salary not being given on time, or they are just locked up in a certain cell kind of a situation. These are also countries where the government of India has a good relationship, but we do not really interfere. We do not question their human rights record. These are the countries where most of the Indians have been locked up in the past few years. Now, why is it that only a handful, only 8 of them have been transferred to India? What is the reason behind this? Now, it's not an easy system or it's not an easy process. Even after you have this agreement, all the 3 parties have to agree to the transfer. Now, what are the 3 parties? Government of India, government of that country, like if it's Qatar, then Qatar government, and the person who is sentenced. All these 3 have to agree. Now, let me tell you the most interesting feature here. In most cases, out of the 3 parties, the one party that does not agree to the transfer is the prisoner himself. Why? The prisoners, and again they are not wrong, the prisoners believe that if they have to remain within the jail, they might as well be in Qatar or Saudi Arabia where they are given much better facilities than what they would get in Indian jails. That is a fact. Even the most basic amenities are lacking when it comes to Indian jails. There are so many prison manuals, there are so many laws that have been passed about what rights do prisoners have in Indian jail, but very few of them have actually been given these rights. And this is why the prisoners usually say that no, we don't want to come back. And even if they say yes, there's a lot of documentation that is involved. Prison allocation, in which prison would they be sent to India, they have to be escorted back. All of these make the process much more complicated than what you think. And that is why only a handful of Indians have actually been transferred to Indian jails. Having said that, the government of India does try and help them out. Why? See, every country has a different kind of a law. Like in our country, for example, you have access to legal aid. In Indian polity, all of you would have read about NALSA, that try and provide free legal aid to the needy people. So you have the access to lawyers. If you can't afford it, the government will provide you with one. In most other countries, that is not the case. The consular access, free legal aid are provided by the Indian government even if you are abroad. It is the Ministry of Home Affairs that tries to coordinate along with the Ministry of External Affairs to make sure that all the facilities that you are expected, you should get even when you're in the prison. A lot of Indians abroad are in the jail because they can't afford to fight their case. Like the Indians that are in the jail in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE are in the jail because they just could not get a lawyer or they could not afford a lawyer. So the government is trying to rectify that mistake as well. And there have been multiple such cases where people, and again, not just people in blue collar jobs, where there have been people, highly paid professionals who have been in jail and who have not been given the kind of treatment that they deserve. This is where the government of India tries to help them out using its own diplomatic channels. The agreement that is at the center of this article is the TSP, Transfer of Sentenced Persons Agreement. India has this agreement with multiple countries such as Australia, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Brazil, Cambodia. There's a long list that you can read. And again, this agreement is upheld and it is looked into by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Ministry of Home Affairs is the one that is responsible for internal security of the country. They are the ones who make sure that these agreements are upheld, and if some prisoner has to be transferred to India, how to go about that, what arrangements to make, all of these become a part of the mandate of the Home Affairs Ministry. This is where the government of India has been trying to make sure that Indians are given a priority wherever they are stuck in a bad situation. You would have seen this trend emerge, especially ever since late Sushma Swaraj was our foreign minister. A lot of Indians were rescued when they were stuck in a bad situation. A lot of Indians were rescued when they needed humanitarian crisis, be it the COVID-19 pandemic, be it issues of civil war, etc. The government of India has tried its best to rescue Indians from abroad as much as possible. This is also important because we have a humongous diaspora. We have about 3.5 crore Indians that are abroad right now. And they also are our advantage. A lot of countries have to maintain good relationship with India because so many Indian origin people live in those parts of the world and they can actually impact their voting. India, for example, last year was the largest recipient of remittances around the world. No other country's people send so much money back to their country as Indians do, which is a big strength for us. And this is where the government of India, under the Immigration Act of 1983, tries to safeguard Indian migrant workers, tries to safeguard whoever Indian is actually working abroad in countries, especially West Asia and other parts of the world. It's an ongoing process. It's challenging because your sovereignty ends at your shores and some other countries' rules and their laws start when it comes to their country. So you can't force them, but the Indian government still is trying its best to make sure that we do not witness any human rights violation of Indians while they are abroad. There are a lot of these issues coming up that many Indians who are imprisoned abroad are under trials and they have not been given the kind of human rights protection that they deserve, especially in some of the developing countries or least developed countries. This is again something that the government of India has been working towards using its diplomatic measures. You would have seen a few months ago how there was a big issue of retired Navy personnel from India that were imprisoned in Qatar, that were given a death sentence in Qatar. And then through diplomatic effort, the government of India made sure that most of them were released and they were sent back to India. So diplomacy works at that level as well. But again, it's not that easy. It's not that only one meeting will be able to give you the kind of result that you're hoping for. The next article that we have is specifically important from the mains examination point of view. In the mains exam, you will see a lot of policy related questions of the government. The one big headache for governments around the world, not just India right now, is how to stop the spread of disinformation. In other words, how to make sure that false news, false information does not spread far and wide. In India, unfortunately, we have already seen so many instances of false or fake news being spread, leading to violence in many parts of the country, be it through WhatsApp, be it through other social media platforms, be it through some other word to from some other mouth to mouth or word of mouth dissemination of the information. All of this has actually led to a problem where people trust these kind of platforms much more than what they would actually trust the traditional media for. Increasingly, we have seen in the past few years the people's trust in traditional media, orthodox media, has been declining. People trust news coming in from other sources much more. And with the advent of technology and AI, using deep fakes, using fake photographs has become much easier. And people who want to disrupt the ongoing social harmony in the country, it has become a big tool in their hands. That is why the government has been focusing a lot on the spread or on curtailing disinformation. These are the kind of questions that you get asked from public policy, etc. Like 2013, we had this question: considering the threats cyberspace poses for the country, India needs a digital armed forces to prevent crimes. And then they asked about the policy of the government. In the mains examination, these kind of questions are pretty common. Certain policy decision taken by the government, its impact, and how would you evaluate that? Now, if you go back to the article mainly talks about how India has the largest number of internet users in any country. So we have about 90 million internet users, the largest social media user base globally. The problem is when you are such a large social media base, or when you are such a large social network base, that means there is a mobile phone and internet in almost every adult's hand in the country right now. That makes it a very dangerous situation where a lot of people who can't distinguish between what is fake and what is not fake, when they start believing stuff which is not true, that can lead to a lot of problems in the society. So much so that the World Economic Forum, in its Global Risk Report 2025, has said that the single biggest risk right now facing the world is actually disinformation. It is the single biggest short term global risk. Imagine the kind of issues that the countries around the world are facing. I don't know how many of you have seen this, but there's a very famous web series going on right now on Netflix. It is a web series called Adolescence. And that web series, it's a short series, it's mainly about how social media can have an impact on the mind of young people, leading them to extreme situations, in some cases, even taking the step of murdering someone, which is all a reality what we see around us. Spread of disinformation because of social media has been a weapon in the hands of many people who want to disrupt the society. Many of them have been using for polarizing people politically, to divide people on the basis of caste or religion or their own sentiments. We have seen a decline in the media's trust. As I told you, most people don't have a very high repute for media in their minds now. Media channels, the debates that we have, most of them are now being seen as biased, either in favor of the government or against the government. Most people think that these debates are just shouting matches, and that is why people are looking for alternative sources of news. And this is where the problem starts, because when you don't trust the official media and you start looking for other sources, especially the sources that align with your ideology, that is when it becomes problematic. We have situations such as Chinese disinformation attacks that we have seen in many parts of the country. We have seen fake videos being spread. You might see a video of someone hitting another person, and the message would be, the person of your caste is being hit, let's go and attack them. And because in that movement you think that yes, I have to protect my pride, I have to protect my group or caste, You don't think twice about verifying the news, and rather you just go and attack whoever you think is responsible. We have seen the Chinese propaganda behind it multiple times. We have even seen issues of consumer boycotts. In many cases, you have seen false news being spread, many people boycotting certain products, many people boycotting certain companies just because you think that they were involved in something which you did not like. The point is, it is very, very, very difficult to trust and verify the news that is coming out. What recommendation does the author have? The author says that these are certain things that we can do. First, focus on digital literacy and public awareness. Make people more aware about what fake news looks like and what real news looks like. If you come across a certain news, how can you verify that? How can you make sure that before acting on it or before taking an action towards it, you first verify that with a cool and a calm mind? For example, campaigns such as RBI's Financial Literacy Drive, Shakti Election Fact Checking Collective, all of these are being done specifically to segregate fake news from original news. Then we have generative AI oversight, which says that AI should be regulated. There should be accountability of content generation, means whoever is publishing or creating fake content, the originator of the content should be found out and they should be punished with the strictest of enforcement. Another recommendation is algorithmic audits. For example, EU has done that, European Union. They have Digital Services Act. We can also do something like that to make sure that all these very large social media platforms, all these large platforms where millions of people have their account, they are audited. If there's a false news that is spreading, you should be able to identify who was the first sender of that message so that you can actually track that person down. Then fact checking infrastructure, India has started something like this. We have deepfake analysis unit that was working during the 2024 election. We also have the PIB fact checking unit now that fact checks a lot of the information coming out. We can have transparency in online ads. For example, a lot of ads that are being given these days are actually not showing the correct information. Many of them are misleading. Many of them claim to do what the other or what their product cannot do possibly. For example, you would have seen Baba Ramdev criticized in the Supreme Court multiple times. Why? Because of their claims that they had made for their products, saying that our products can cure COVID, our products can cure many other diseases, and there are comments against the allopathic doctors. They were criticized in the Supreme Court continuously for this. So this is something the government can do, try and bring more transparency in these online ads and have cross-border coalition. See, spread of fake news is a problem that every country is facing. It's not an India-specific problem. It's a problem that is being faced by UK, US, China, Russia, all these countries. So it's better not to fight alone, rather collaborate with as many countries as possible where you can actually share information with the other country how to fight against it. If you have developed a new tool, help others as well. We do have certain laws in place about that. We do have something called the IT Act. We have section 69A that blocks online content if it is found to be fake or false. We also have the IT rules of 2021 that allow the government or empower the government to ask the social media platforms to take out certain content. That has been criticized as well because see, these laws are created so that fake news can be stopped. But most of the times the government uses this or rather misuses this to take down content that criticizes the government. Like there's a difference. For example, let's say, for example, I post online that the government has not been able to control corruption or there is corruption here and here, which is true. The government can ask Twitter to take my post down. That is a problem. Fake news should not be mixed up with criticism of the government. These kind of laws, these kind of rules often are used by the government to actually control any criticism of the government online. And this is where we have to strike an important balance. If you look globally, there are many other examples. EU is kind of a flag bearer in this regard. European Union has their Digital Services Act that basically makes sure that there are heavy penalties being imposed on those platforms that do not apply to these kind of social media audits that they do. US has a White House AI Bill of Rights that talks about what algorithms can do and what they should not be allowed to do. There is a big debate right now around the world about should AI be regulated or not. Is the power of AI going beyond our hands or not? There are many people who think AI should be let go of or should be let free to do whatever they want. On the other hand, there are many people who think AI should be regulated. Like, Elon Musk is one of the first people who said that AI has to be regulated. We can't just let it free. That requires the countries to come together and work together if they really have to take such a step against these humongous companies. If you look at the societal impact in India of this pulse or of this spread of fake news, in 2021, Microsoft did a study according to which India has the highest number of exposure to fake news among the 22 countries surveyed. So, it's an amalgamation of a problem where India has so many mobile phone and internet users, and on the other hand, we have so many of the people who are not literate enough to understand the difference between fake and true. There are people who have been given access to internet without having the knowledge or technical know-how to use it properly or to identify how is it different from fake news. And this is where we have been struggling for a very, very, very long time. There are certain institutions in place to try and check the spread of this fake news. As we discussed earlier, we have the PIB fact check, we have alt news, boomlet. These are private organizations. Interestingly, alt news founder was also jailed for some time. According to him, he was criticizing the government, he was taking down the post, or he was telling that the posts that are praising the government are actually fake. The government did not like it. So there's always a to and fro between such organizations and the government. We also have cyber crime coordination center, which works under Ministry of Home Affairs, specifically to report on digital crime, cybercrime, and uh, uh, stop the spread of fake information. Moving on to the last article for the day. This last article for the day is regarding Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. The context is that 3rd of April, that is tomorrow, is his death anniversary. Now, as you know, Marathas, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, both of these are one of those topics that appear quite frequently in the UPSC examination. Like this question was asked in the prelims examination a few years back: who amongst the following streamlined Maratha administration after Sambhaji? This is a practice question for you. Do tell me in the comment section what is the answer. Now, this is a specifically history-based topic that has been covered in today's Hindu newspaper. So, we will only be focusing mainly on what the article tells us. For example, the article tells us about what were the military innovation and leadership that were initiated by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He is known as a person who actually introduced and popularized the idea of guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare is a situation where you don't fight the enemy face to face. When you fight the enemy face to face in an open battle, obviously the people having more or a larger army on their side will win against those who have a smaller army. So the alternative to that is guerrilla warfare, where you don't confront the enemy straight on. You basically try and attack them, sneak upon them, and try and hide in the nearby places and then attack in such a situation where the number game is in your favor. He was the one who actually mastered this. He knew his terrain, he knew how this warfare can be used against much larger armies such as the Mughals. Lot of his account or lot has been written about him. For example, in Francois Martin's memoirs, where he highlighted how the simplicity of the Maratha forces was overwhelming for the Mughal military. Mughal military was much more extravagant, used elephants, etc., but they were no match for the Marathas. Also, there are so many accounts of Shivaji living a Spartan life. Spartan life means a very simple life without having any luxury. So if I say that I live a Spartan life, that means I don't have any cars, I don't have any vehicle, I sit on the mat to eat my food, I don't have any luxury possessions. That's called a Spartan life. Something that is associated with the life of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj all throughout. If you actually see, because he was such a well-known warrior, a lot of other aspects of his administration are often neglected. For example, if you look at his team, he made sure that his team is as diverse as possible, rather than excluding any specific section of the society. For example, his team included people from Maratha, from Kul, from Kayas Prabhu to Brahmins to even African Muslims. He made sure that the people are selected in their respective positions on the basis of the talent that they have and not on the basis of the caste or not on the basis of the religion that they follow. His administration also included craftsmen, tribal, fisher folk, not again not giving preference to a specific caste, but giving preference to a talent that is required. He made sure that he has a meritocratic system, and that is proven because after his death, what happened? So there were about 240 forts that he had, and these were commanded, none of them were actually passed on hereditary to the nobles. Whoever was the most eligible person to head these forts was the one who was chosen, rather than people having to or having control of these forts just on the basis of the bloodline. At that time in our history, to do something like this, to not pass on your position in a hereditary manner, was a big thing. There were other social reforms that he carried out, but again, they are kind of shadowed by his military prowess. He was someone who was against sati. When he was on his own deathbed, he instructed his queens not to be forced into sati. He also, as you know, was a champion of Hindutva. He allowed voluntary reconversions to Hinduism much before what Arya Samaj did. This thing that Arya Samaj became famous for, this was Shuddhi mission, that was actually something that Chhatrapati Shivaji had done much earlier. He was also against slavery. In 1677, the Dutch basically were involved in slave trading because this was a very lucrative exercise for them. It made them a lot of money. This specifically was banned by Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj in his own area. Again, in that era, the things that he was doing were much ahead of his times. Apart from that, he also replaced Persian with the Indian languages, made sure that a lot of positions are given the Indian names. For example, Raj Vyavarashoka, that is a Sanskrit lexicon, means a dictionary. It translated about 1500 plus Persian terms to Indian languages. Marathi was also developed under him. He made sure that the use of the local language is seen with the pride and not something that you would be afraid of or you should be ashamed of. He made sure that the Indian languages are given as much importance, if not more, than the foreign languages. In terms of land reforms, he abolished a feudal landlordism that was called Watandari. He made sure that the right wise like system were implemented, means the rights directly had to give money to the government rather than someone coming in between like zamindars and exploiting the farmers. He gave direct land control to cultivators, to rights, means the farmers. All of that was done to make sure that the farmers, the cultivators are not being pressurized to do something against their own wishes. These were the 5 articles that we have taken from today's Hindu and the Indian Express newspaper. Now, I have a mains practice question for you based on what we had discussed in a mains specific article. And then I have a few other questions for you for your homework. From the mains topic that we had discussed about disinformation, a kind of question that can be asked is, disinformation poses a serious challenge to India's democratic institutions, social cohesion and national security. Examine the causes and consequences of disinformation epidemic in India. What steps have the Indian state taken to address this issue? Suggest a way forward. Now, it's a very bulky question. If you see this clearly, they're asking you 4 things. First, they're asking you the causes. Second, they're asking you the consequences. Third, they're asking you what steps have been taken. And fourth, they're asking you the way forward. So in these kind of answers, make sure you do not miss out on anything. If they're asking you 4 things or 3 things, you have to specifically answer all of them. Now, in the introduction part, there are 2 ways to write a good introduction. Either you write a fact about a keyword that has been asked, or you write a definition. So depending on what kind of a question there is, if you see a keyword which you can define, or if you can see a keyword according or related to which you can give a fact, that would be a good way to begin. So basically what we have done here is, we have kind of given a fact here. Either we could have defined what is disinformation, or we have here given a fact about how we have so many internet users in India, which has accentuated the problem for India even further. So we can start. In this digital age, disinformation or intentional false news or intentional spread of the false news has emerged as a critical threat. With India having over 900 million internet users, a rapid proliferation of the fake news, Deepfakes is even a major problem. So you can even cut it short. But again, a better way or a good way to start is either write a fact or a definition. We have kind of combined the two. If you see here, we have also defined what is disinformation. We have given a fact also about 900 million users, depending upon whatever is suitable to you. Now, in the body, again, we'll have to answer four things: causes, consequences, the steps taken, and the way forward. So we'll start with the causes part. What are the causes for disinformation? We discussed this during this our discussion as well. Widespread digital penetration, social media platforms which are unregulated, declining public trust in the orthodox media. We discussed that as well. Then there's foreign interference from time to time. For example, China's case that we did discuss. Second part is the consequences. So consequences, basically what happens because of this. There is social harmony that is put in danger. There are security risks, there's polarization of the society. We have seen so much violence. If you want, you can give some real examples as well. Not a pretty difficult question to answer. If you actually have seen the discussion, you should not be able to or should not be struggling with answering that. Third part was about what the government has already done. Again, something that we did discuss. The government has started agencies as the PIB fact check. They have also started deepfake analysis unit, specifically before the election. IT rules, awareness campaign by RBI, etc. All these pointers can be included, depending on whatever is the word limit. If it's a 250-word answer, in this case, you can write more points. If it's a 200-word answer, maybe you can cut down a few points as well. And the fourth part was a way forward. This is what you can write as a way forward, means what are the other suggestions. So way forward can be learn from EU, learn from UK, learn from US, something that they have done. Similar kind of policies and rules, etc. can be formulated here as well. So again, please make sure that when you read the mains question, most mains questions will always ask you more than one thing. There's hardly any mains question that will only ask you one thing. At least two things are always asked. So make sure that you answer everything that is asked. They're asking you two things, three things, four things, depending upon that. Answer all these different parts. Now, if you attended yesterday's session, yesterday you were given 3 practice questions. So I'll be discussing those 3 practice questions first, and then in the end I'll give you a few practice questions for you from today's discussion, which you can attempt. You can go to the description of the video. There's a link. You click on the link, you'll be directed to our website where you have that quiz that you can attend based on today's class. We will discuss those answers tomorrow as well. Whatever score that you get in the quiz, do tell us in the comment section. This question was asked yesterday with reference to El Nino southern oscillations. Consider the following. Number 1. El Nino is associated with the warming of central and eastern tropical Pacific Ocean, which generally leads to reduced monsoon rainfall, which is absolutely correct. So whenever we have El Nino, that means the monsoon will be suppressed in India. La Nina results in cooling of the Pacific Ocean and often stronger southwest monsoon winds to India. Yes, that southwest monsoon to India. Yes, that's the opposite of El Nino. So it has a positive impact on our monsoon. Neutral ENSO conditions ensure normal monsoon rainfall. No, not always. So whether we have normal rainfall or not depends on a lot of other factors. It's not just about this. So when they use words such as it ensures, it guarantees, that is usually wrong. Many other factors like Indian Ocean dipole, etc., they all determine whether rainfall will be stable or not. Third is wrong. 1 and 2 are correct. So the answer here would be A. That is the correct answer here. Another question that we had yesterday, with reference to fully accessible route bonds, consider the following. Number 1. All government securities with maturity period of over 10 years are eligible under FAR route. No, not all. The RBI has chosen some based on multiple parameters. It's not just that all of them are eligible. That is wrong. There is no requirement for a foreign portfolio investor to register with SEBI to invest under FAR route. That is correct. You don't, if you are a foreign portfolio investor, you don't have to register with the SEBI specifically. That has made work easier for them. So second is correct. First is wrong. The answer here would be B in this case. Yeah. Next, consider the following statements regarding Forest Rights Act. The Act provides rights to allocation of forest land to fulfill infrastructural needs of the community. That is correct. That is what the Forest Rights Act is. Gram Sabha is the authority to initiate the process for determining the nature and extent of individual forest rights. That is also correct. Gram Sabha is the authority that has been given the responsibility to make sure that they are the ones who actually will decide or who actually will determine how this land allocation will only be done. So the answer here would be C. Both of these are correct. Gram Sabha, as you know, is the assembly of all the adults, all the voters in the village, everyone above 18 years of age who has been registered as a voter, they all become a part of the Gram Sabha. Now, I have a few practice questions for you based on what we had discussed today. Do go through these questions, try and answer them. If you want to attempt this quiz, check out the description of the video. You'll get a link, open the website, attempt the quiz, and make sure that you are telling us the score in the comment section. This is the first question for today. And again, tomorrow we will be discussing these answers as well. There's a second question. This is about India's defense export. Then there's a third question, and there's one more. This. These are the 4 questions that I have for you from today's practice. Make sure that you do answer them. This was our session for the day. I hope that you really learned something new. Do join us tomorrow as well as at 4 p.m. where we analyze the most important news stories from the Hindu newspaper and the Indian Express. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.